Today, we have the most secure border in the history of this nation. So, you know, when President Trump called me to come back to this administration, I was actually out to dinner with my wife, and my phone rings. I'm sitting at the table, and it says POTUS. My wife says, "Oh, shit." And we had a conversation. President Trump said he wanted me to take care of three things: secure the border, run a mass deportation operation, and find hundreds of thousands of missing children. That was his instructions to me. So as of today, we got the most secure border in history of the nation. I don't take credit for it. I give credit to President Trump for signing the executive orders, ending catch and release, remain in Mexico, third safe country agreements, all this stuff that worked in Trump 45. I really give the thanks to the men and women of the United States Border Patrol, the finest men and women I've ever met. Rodney Scott, the CBP commissioner, is doing a great job over there. They had the border down over 90% in 7 weeks. 7 weeks, even that amazed me. I thought it'd take at least 120 days. They did it in 7 weeks. Amazing what the men and women of Border Patrol can do when they're allowed to do what they're supposed to do, secure the border. Last 4 years, I've been raising hell about the open border that Biden administration intentionally inflicted upon this country. As a matter of fact, that's one of the first things President Trump said to me when I picked the phone up, is "You've been bitching about it for 4 years, want to come fix it?" I said, "Absolutely." But the men and women of the Border Patrol for 4 years, I made over a dozen trips down there to talk to the men and women of the Border Patrol, because I used to be one of them. I started my career as a Border Patrol agent in San Diego Sector, Campo Station. I was just there 2 weeks ago. It was a great trip, kind of reminiscing of back when I was an agent, before we had cell phones, before we had computers. So it was remarkable to talk to these agents. They got a phone that does everything. Back then, we used to process an alien on the hood of a Ram Charger. You had to press hard enough to go through 4 carbon copies. And now they're doing everything on a cell phone. So they're spoiled, but they're doing a great job. So most secure border, even better than Trump 45. Illegal immigration is down 96%, which tells you one thing. Tells me several things. Every day I woke up the last 4 years pissed off because I knew the Biden administration unsecured the most secure border on purpose. It wasn't mismanagement. It wasn't incompetence. It was by design. And I say that because Secretary Mayorkas was a deputy secretary under President Obama. President Biden was the vice president. We had a family surge during the Obama years. How did we stop it? We built detention centers. We built family residential centers. We held them long enough to see a judge, which took about 40 days. 90% lost their case. They simply don't qualify for asylum. We put them on airplanes, sent them home, and the border numbers tanked. Now that they're president and the secretary, what did they do? The complete opposite of what they knew worked. They weren't detaining them. They weren't seeing the judge. And ICE wasn't allowed to arrest an illegal alien unless they're convicted of a serious crime. They did the complete opposite of what they know worked for them 4 years prior. So this wasn't an accident. It was by design. So for 4 years, I woke up knowing how many women got raped last night, how many children died making that journey, how many women and children were sex trafficked across the border, how many known suspected terrorists came across the border. Every day I woke up knowing all this was happening because the border was open. So now with the border down 96%, there's been numerous studies done by nonpartisan groups that says 31% of women that make that journey through cartels get sexually assaulted. So when President Trump has it down 96%, when 96% less people are coming, how many women ain't being raped? How many aliens aren't dying making the journey? How many known suspected terrorists aren't coming across the border every day? How many women and children aren't sex trafficked into this country? How many pounds of fentanyl is not making it across this secure border? President Trump's policy saves thousands of lives, and no one's talking about it, especially the fake media. Thousands of lives he's saving. Even the border wall saves lives. Because women and children can't get over that wall, which means they're going to a place where there's not a wall. What's waiting on them? The men and women of the Border Patrol is going to deal with those humanitarian medical issues right then. Saving lives. President Trump is saving thousands of lives every week. They always say the Trump administration is inhumane. I'm a racist, supposedly. I'm a white nationalist. I read it all. I'm a terrorist, whatever you want to call me. I don't give a shit what people think about me. Never have. The facts of the matter is, if you want to compare the Trump administration and Biden administration, let's do that. Under the Biden administration, what they call humane administration, a record number of aliens died making that journey, over 4,000. Historic record of migrants dying. 250,000 Americans died from fentanyl coming across the open border. Sex trafficking was an all-time high. Cartels made more money than they've ever made. They made record amount of money smuggling aliens. They make a record amount of money trafficking in women and children. They made a record amount of money in drug smuggling. Biden administration broke all kinds of records. Americans died at record numbers. Aliens died at record numbers. There's nothing humane about that administration. When you make a promise to the whole world, you can cross the border illegally, don't worry about it. We'll release you in 24 hours. We'll fly you to the city of your choice. We'll give you a free airline ticket. We'll give you a free hotel room. We'll give you 3 meals a day. We'll give you free medical care. And after about 90, 120 days, we'll give you work authorization, which is the real reason you came here. You're not really escaping fear and persecution from your own government. When you make those types of promises, the whole world's going to come, including the most vulnerable. And that's why so many died. And that's why the border's wide open to fentanyl. On any given day, up to 70% of agents were off the line. 70%. And they wonder why they had a mass immigration crisis on the southern border. Now, again, most secure border in the history of this nation. Lives are being saved every day. We got a little bit more work to do. We got to build some more wall. We got some more border buoys put in. We got a little bit more work to do. I looked at the numbers this morning coming in. In the last several months, we went from 10,000, 12,000, sometimes 15,000 illegal aliens coming to our border every day. Yesterday, 162. All arrested, nobody released, all returned. Think of that, 15,000 to 162. And that was just yesterday. I've seen numbers as low as 88 across 2,000 miles of border. That is one hell of a secure border. 0 released. No one was released. That's a secure border. I looked at the amount of gotaways. Under Joe Biden, an average day, 1,800 gotaways, known gotaways. They were captured on video, drone traffic, or sensor traffic. They got in because 70% of agents were busy processing the humanitarian crisis, so 1,800 a day average gotaways. How many yesterday? 16. 16 from 1,800. The most secure border in the history of this nation, and the data proves it, whether they like it or not. That's just a stone cold fact. And that's because we got the greatest president in my lifetime sitting at the White House. ICE, where we're at. So that's one thing, border. The next thing is interior enforcement operations. I look at the numbers yesterday. Total removals between ICE and CBP are right around 380,000. We'll give them around 400,000 at the end of the year. That's not bad considering that's just since January 21st. The first 4 months of the fiscal year, Joe Biden controlled, he wasn't doing squat. So the numbers, if you look for 7 months, that's a pretty good number. ICE is arresting, a couple thousand people a day on the street. That's a good number. But now, with 10,000 more agents coming on board, just wait and see what happens this coming year. I see, the media likes to attack ICE, saying, well, most of the people they arrested aren't criminals. Bullshit. I look at the numbers every day. 70% of everybody ICE arrests is a criminal. But some of the media think they're not criminal enough. It's just DUI. 10,000 people a year die from DUI. I think it's a significant public safety issue. But 70% we classify as criminals. Who are the other 30%? Gang members that don't have a criminal history? National security threats. Most of them don't have a criminal history because they're laying low to do their dirty deed. We've arrested thousands of known suspected terrorists. Who's arrested them? Final orders. People who had due process at great taxpayer expense and were ordered removed by a federal judge but didn't leave. We have to find them and arrest them. Because the message we're not going to send to the whole world is that it's okay to cross the border illegally. It's a crime, but don't worry about it. Show up in court or don't show up in court and get a final order removal. Don't worry about it. We're not looking for you. That's what Secretary Mayorkas told ICE the last 4 years. You can't arrest somebody for simply being here illegally. You got to be convicted of a serious crime before you can target an illegal alien for an arrest. We're not doing that. We're telling agents enforce the law that Congress enacted, uphold the oath you took, and enforce immigration law. So when you have a final order and you've had taxpayers spent billions of dollars in this due process, you're going home. And we find you, we're going to arrest you, you're going home. Right now, we got about 600,000 illegal aliens with criminal histories walking the streets of this nation. That continues to be our priority. We got 1.4 million illegal aliens with a final order removal. We're looking for you too. But let me make it clear. We are prioritizing public safety threats and national security threats, and the data proves it. But if you're in the country illegally, you're not off the table. If we find you, you're leaving. Sanctuary cities wants to push back on the Trump administration. They've lost their minds. Sanctuary cities are sanctuaries for criminals. And I'm sick of the garbage I hear from these politicians saying, well, we're a welcoming community. We're a sanctuary city because we want victims and witnesses of crime that are in the country illegally to feel welcome to come to the police to make those reports as victims and witnesses without fear that we're working with ICE. That is just a bunch of crap. Because victims and witnesses of crime don't want the bad guy back in the neighborhood either. I mean, for God's sakes, it's common sense. If you want to protect the immigrant community, then work with ICE, because most of the Tren de Agua and MS-13 and gangs like that, where do they commit most of their offenses? In the migrant community. And most illegal aliens in this country, a majority of them, even though they're in the country illegally and they cross the border, which is a crime, most of them are God-fearing family people. They don't want predators in their neighborhood either. They don't want somebody arrested for DUI 5 times driving through the neighborhood either. So there's a bunch of crap they're pushing about sanctuary cities. Sanctuary cities are sanctuaries for criminals. So what are sanctuaries getting right now? They're getting exactly what they don't want. More agents in your community and more worksite enforcement. Because I said 2 months ago, we're going to flood the zone, and that's exactly what we're doing. In Chicago, it's coming. Right after the election, Brandon Johnson, the mayor, said I wasn't welcome in Chicago. Guess where I was 2 days later? One day, I went up there for 1 day to start an operation, and 1 day, if I remember correctly, we arrested 7 child sexual predators, 9 Tren de Agua members. We took weapons off the street that had a switch that made that handgun fully automatic. We arrested 2 illegal aliens with a murder conviction. 1 day. So watch what happens in the very near future. President Trump is going to make Chicago safe again. So sanctuary cities don't want to give ICE access to the bad guy and the safety and security of a jail. That's all we want. We want access to talk to the illegal alien criminal that you locked in a jail cell. Let us have access to him when you're done with him. So what you need to understand, when you get arrested tonight, if you got arrested, you get fingerprinted, Prints go to NCIC for a records check. Every jail does it. But at the same time it goes to NCIC, it goes to DHS. So we'll get a printout. You got, okay, Tom Homan, the illegal alien who deported twice before, is sitting in Cook County Jail right now. So we drop a detainer. We say, we want to talk to that guy when they're done with him. And they just ignore it. And they release him back to the street when they're done with him. And that's why DOJ, Pam Bondi, is suing sanctuary cities. Because when I was an agent, a long time ago, I've arrested U.S. citizens for harboring and concealing an illegal alien in a place of employment or in a home. When we know for a fact, based on biometric and biographical data, that that illegal alien with a prior immigration history is sitting in that jail right now, and we're not allowed access to that, is that not harboring and concealing? How are they different from a U.S. citizen that does that? So DOJ sue them, and I hope we win. I think we're going to win. And sanctuary cities be a thing of the past. So ICE is going to keep doing their job, 10,000 more agents, more airplanes, more detention facilities, more agents. Every day, here's what you need to understand. Based on the numbers I just told you, every day the men and women of ICE are making this country safer because every illegal alien criminal, every illegal alien terrorist, every illegal alien public safety threat that they take off the street every day makes that community safer. That's just a stone cold fact. So the men and women of ICE, I was one of them. I was the first ICE director actually came up to the ranks. I never asked the 20,000 men and women that worked for me to do anything I didn't do myself. ICE, despite all the hate and rhetoric they're taking, they're out there right now. We got 1,000 teams working the streets right now, putting themselves in harm's way to make their community safer. And to the members of Congress and to the media who wants to attack the men and women of ICE, shame on you. If you don't like what ICE is doing, then go yell at Congress. Because they're not making this up. They're enforcing the laws enacted by Congress. And you just talked to Russ Vowell just up here. Congress appropriates them funding to do this job. So they're enforcing the laws enacted by Congress, the laws that are appropriated by funding to do the job, but members of Congress want to compare ICE to Nazis and racists and terrorists. It's disgusting. Any congressperson who wants to compare ICE to a terrorist or a racist are an embarrassment to the position they hold. They shouldn't be up on Capitol Hill representing anybody. They're disgusting. But they want to call them they want to call them terrorists and Nazis. If they're terrorists and Nazis for enforcing the law, what's that make you, Congress? You wrote the law. ICE is going to continue doing what they're doing because they're doing the right thing. The data proves it. But the media likes to turn that data and turn it around. I mean, last year I did this. A week after, I got all these hit pieces by media in the room. Well, write whatever you want, 'cause I don't care. Tom Homan isn't going anywhere. Tom Homan ain't shutting up. Tom Homan's going to do what he's got to do to make this country safe again. Children, third rail. 300,000 missing children. Of course, members of Congress, that's not true. Yeah, it is. President Trump wants to find every one of them or run down every lead until we exhaust all the leads. But that's the toughest job. Out of the three things, the toughest job is to find children. Because you all know, you all own cars, you own a home, you got credit cards, you pay utility bills. We know how to find you. Children don't have that digital footprint, which means we got to count on the digital footprint of the so-called sponsors they release these children to. And when they didn't fingerprint them, when they didn't double-check their identity or their addresses they provided, it makes it hard. Who are these sponsors? Because many of the addresses we're going to now are a parking lot, a park and ride, a grocery store, a church. But we're working out there every day. HSI all day. Of course, the media says HSI is looking for children to deport them. HSI is looking for children to make sure they're safe, to make sure they're not victims of sex trafficking and labor trafficking. That's what we're doing. And of course, there's going to be immigration consequences, absolutely. But we're trying to save children that we know are living a life of hell every day. And many of the children we found are perfectly safe. They're with family members. They're just hiding because they know they'll have to leave here because they don't really qualify for asylum. They know that. If you look at the data in immigration court, right around 90% of people who claim asylum at the border end up with an order of removal because they're not escaping fear and persecution from their home country because of race, religion, political affiliation. They're coming here for a better life, and I get that, but that's not asylum. I want people to remember, and the media to remember, they call them asylum seekers. They have a right to claim asylum. Okay. But when they lose the case, they got to go home. Or due process doesn't mean squat. I asked members of Congress during the last administration, when Secretary Mayorkas is testifying and saying these people have a right to claim due process, ask them a follow-up question. If they lose their case, should they be deported? The answer is yes, they have to. That's what the law requires. One of the reasons we have the most secure border in the history of this nation right now is because of ICE. Because we're showing the whole world there are consequences to violating our laws. You can get due process, but at the end of that due process, when they say you're going home, and we're out looking for you, and you're going to go home. That's one of the reasons we have the most secure border in the nation, because we're showing there's consequences of violating our laws. And children, some of the children we found are in sex trafficking. Some of the children we found in forced labor, and we rescue these children. Just recently, we had an agreement with Guatemala to return children to their home country, to reunite with their parents. And we got sued. And a liberal judge has stopped us from doing that for the time being. But they want to point their finger at Tom Homan and the Trump administration for family separation, where 2,500 families were separated because the parents were prosecuted. That happens to U.S. citizen families every day across this country. But shame on us for prosecuting an adult coming across the border illegally that causes separation because the child can't go to jail with a parent. Shame on us. However, 500,000 kids can separate from their families, be smuggled in the United States. You can lose track of 300,000 of them. You're not even looking for them. Then when we do want to reunite them with the parents, you say no. So who really is the masters of family separation? It's not President Trump. I said it during one of my first interviews before the election. I was asked, well, how do you not separate families when you deport? We deport families together. And the media went nuts. But we will deport families together. We'll keep families together. That's what we want to do. And that's what we try to do right now with Guatemalan children who want to go home to their parents. The parents want their children to come home. The country wants them to come home, but some liberal judge says we're not going to let that happen. Disgusting. And I looked at a number the other day, it was like 1,400 children were released to Adventist sponsors where no home study was ever done. They didn't go to the house. They didn't go to the address, make sure this was the actual address. They didn't run it. God help us. I also read a report that some of these children have since passed away. It's sickening what the last administration did. I don't want to hear another word about the cruelty of the Trump administration. I'll say it again. He's saving thousands of lives, and we're rescuing children every day because of the incompetence of the Biden administration. I get fired up. The men and women at ICE are under attack right now. Assaults against ICE agents are up over 1,000%. I blame the rhetoric of the media by most of them members of Congress, like I just said. Members of Congress who want to attack ICE for enforcing the laws they enacted. A judge just decided to shut down Alligator Alcatraz. I went to Alligator Alcatraz. I walked to the detention facility. I went to the medical facility. Detention facility was clean, well kept. The medical facility, outstanding. I talked to the head nurse. No serious medical cases were there. However, if there was, they can treat it there. And if it got too bad, they got a helicopter on standby to take them to the nearest trauma center. I went to the cafeteria and looked at the lunch they were preparing. It's better lunch than I got planned today. I walked the entire facility. They said it was environmental concerns. What environmental concerns? The concrete was already there. It's been there for a long time. It was an airport. The food waste, all waste, is removed from the facility every day. Not even kept on site for over 24 hours. They're removing all waste out of the facility. So where's the environmental concern? Putting up temporary facilities on already existing concrete? It's ridiculous. I guarantee that judge never went down there and looked at that facility. There's an attack by liberal judges to shut us down. I saw this morning on the way in that judge says it was illegal to use the Alien Enemies Act. They got that wrong. We'll win that in the Supreme Court because President Trump did exactly what the law allows him to do. Here's the difference between the Biden administration and the Trump administration. We're using the laws on the books to enforce immigration law in this country. We're not making this up. Everything we have done is in statute. Do you know what statute says if you come to the border illegally and enter? The statute says you shall be detained. Not maybe, not think about it, not released to an NGO. And that's what we're doing. No one's being released. We're following statute. And look at the success since we've been doing that. The Biden administration ignored the law. Even though it says you shall detain, they didn't. And let me tell you why they didn't, because no one's talking about this. Why did they release millions of people into the country rather than detaining them? Thousands of empty ice beds, already paid for about $157 a night, that you already paid for, sitting empty. Thousands of beds sitting empty, already paid for, but they would rather release them to an NGO and put them in a hotel room at $500 a night. Why? Let me tell you why. Because they know if they're put in nice detention beds, they get a hearing within 35, 40 days. 90%, as I said, real data from Immigration Court, 90% lose their case. We put them on an airplane and send them home. That's not what they wanted. They knew if you released them to an NGO, their hearing would be 5, 7, 9 years out if they exhaust their appeals. They knew that. They're playing the long game. Don't detain them. They get a hearing too quickly. Then have to go home. That's why they're so pissed off right now, because we're ruining their long-term strategy. Let's hold them. Let's release them. Non-detained docket, because the Immigration Court prioritizes the detained docket. Like I said, you get a hearing within 35, 40 days. Non-detained docket, you're years out. And what their hope is, in those years, another Democratic administration comes in, and Lord and behold, amnesty for millions of illegal aliens. That was their plan. And they're pissed off right now because we're out looking for these people, removing them, and they don't like it. And why would they do that? Why? Well, I've said from day one, they obviously see a future political benefit in releasing thousands of illegal aliens in this country, illegally, by the way. There's some that think they're future Democratic voters. I personally think when Joe Biden signed the 90 executive orders undoing everything we did to create the most secure border, he also overturned the Trump census rule, which means millions of illegal aliens in sanctuary cities become the next census. And what results come from that? More seats in the House for the Dems. They sold this country out for future political power. And I think that's borderline treasonous. So they can continue attacking us. We're ruining their long-term plans. So we're removing thousands of people a week. And as resources come on board, it's going to expand further. You think they're doing good now? You wait. When the resources get on board, we should have 10,000 agents on board in the next 6 months. Then you watch what happens. People are saying, oh, they're arresting too many people. You ain't saying anything yet. And I stand by that. And I'm sure that I promise you, there'll be a story at Homan threatened. You're damn right. Everything I said here on the record. We're going to fight to enforce the immigration laws of this country. We're going to continue to prioritize public safety threats and national security threats because it makes this country safer. I took a huge pay cut coming back to this administration for one reason. Because I love the guy who was sitting as President of the United States. I think his heart's in the right place. And for the Trump haters out there, I spent many hours with President Trump either on Air Force One or in the Oval Office or off-site at events. I respect this man as much as I do my own father. He's not perfect. Either was my father. Either am I. If you're looking for perfection in a president, you better wait for the second coming of Jesus. I never met a perfect man in my life. But when it comes to border security and national security, having the six of law enforcement, having the six of military, there's not a better man on the planet than President Donald Trump. I wake up every day, like I said, it went from a dinner where she says, oh shit. I wake up every day like a kid in a candy shop. Because we're finally enforcing laws of this country, and we're going to do it without apology. And I look at the numbers every day. Look at how many criminals ICE has taken off the street. How many terrorists we've taken off the street. How many children we have saved that were ignored and abandoned by the last administration, and it makes me proud. I'm not wearing a badge and gun. I'm not on the front line today. I haven't been on the front line in a while. But I wake up every day in awe of the men and women of Border Patrol and ICE. I was a Border Patrol agent. I was an ICE agent. I'm proud of those days. Well, these men and women are out there fighting for this nation every day. If you see a Border Patrol agent, shake their hand and thank them. If you see an ICE agent, thank them. Because the hate is unbelievable. Their spouses are being doxxed. Their kids are being doxxed. They're under great threat. And assault's up over 1,000%. I got a lot of threats against me and my family. There had 1,000 protesters show up at my house in New York. My wife was in Italy and I was in D.C., so 1,000 morons protest an empty house. Protest me all you want. I'll give you my word. Tom Homan isn't going anywhere. And God bless President Trump. God bless the United States of America. Watch what happens in the next year, folks. It's coming.